Hey, good morning and welcome to another daily devotional. Thank you for joining me today. My name is Pastor Aaron, and it's my privilege to be able to bring you God's Word. We are in the Gospel of Matthew. We're about halfway through the Gospel of Matthew, and today in the Gospel of Matthew, we're going to be going through chapter 14, verses 22 through 36. So if you have a Bible, open it up with me, and let's study God's Word together here this morning. There are two things that we are going to go through today and two things that we are going to see. One is that Jesus sees your trials. He sees the hard times and the struggles that you and I go through. The second thing that we are going to see is the faith of Peter. There's an incredible faith that Peter has, though Peter is often given a hard time and not really appreciated for the faith that he showed at the beginning of this story. Well, let me give you a little bit of the background on where we are at, the context of what is going on. Yesterday, we saw that there was an incredible miracle that happened. It started with Jesus hearing that his cousin John had been killed in prison by Herod Antipas, and his wife Herodias. They had heard that Jesus had heard that John had been beheaded and killed in prison. Jesus wanted to withdraw from that location, and he went to a deserted place, a place that there was nothing. He just went there to be alone, probably to grieve, probably to pray. But the multitudes found him. They could not leave Jesus alone. They found him, tracked him down, and Jesus began to teach them as they were there. He began to heal them and heal the sick people that were there. And Jesus looked upon this group with great compassion. Now, they became hungry. This big group of 5,000 men, plus the women and children, you're probably looking in the neighborhood of 15 to 20,000 people. They became hungry. So Jesus took two little fish and five loaves of bread. He blessed them. He broke them, handed them to the disciples. The disciples passed out the bread to all of the people, and the people ate and were filled. Jesus saw a spiritual hunger in them, and he saw a physical hunger in them. And Jesus came to meet both of those needs, both the physical hunger and the spiritual hunger that we have. That's the context of the story. That's the background of the story. So let's jump right into the first one, the first point that I want to make today, and that's the fact that Jesus sees your trials. Let's read Matthew 14, starting in verse 22. Immediately, Jesus made his disciples get into the boat and go before him to the other side while he sent the multitudes away. Now, I just want you to notice something here. It says immediately. The word immediately just means straight away. Just immediately, straight away, Jesus made the disciples get into the boat. The word made is the Greek word anakazo, and it means compelled them, drove them, forced them, used force or some other means, but he made them get into the boat. He would not let them, he wouldn't take no for an answer. And it's because Jesus wanted to do something miraculous in the middle of the night, so he sent them ahead in the boat. And he wanted to give us a couple of examples. The example of the fact that he sees our trials, and the other example of real faith, walking with him by faith. Now it says that Jesus went up on the mountain by himself to pray. And so he sent them away. This is early evening, sent them away, and he went up to spend some time alone with God. I love that Jesus was in the midst of all that was going on. He wanted to have some time alone with his Father. He made that a priority. How much of a priority do you make that in your life? That you just want to spend time alone praying with your Father, your Heavenly Father, that you want to get to know him and be close to him. He went up on the mountain by himself in order to pray and spend some quality time, some good time with his Father. That's what he calls us to do, to not neglect prayer, but to spend time with our Father in heaven. Let's keep looking at this. It says that when evening came, that Jesus was alone there. But the boat was now in the middle of the sea, tossed by the waves, for the wind was contrary. Now, probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 2 to 3 to 4 miles offshore is where that boat was. They were going to cross from one side of the Sea of Galilee to the other side of the Sea of Galilee. They were probably 2 or 3, 4 miles offshore. and they were trying to row, but the wind was against them. And what can happen often in the Sea of Galilee is storms can arise quickly. A storm can just come up out of nowhere, and all of a sudden, it's going to create the not only the wind but the waves and the storm that you're in. And this is the middle of the night that they're in this, and they're going through this. The Sea of Galilee is known for its sudden storms, and during this storm, Jesus wasn't in the boat with his disciples like he was earlier when he was asleep in the middle of the storm. This time he's not in there. Um, in the Gospel of Mark, when they're in the middle of the sea, the Gospel of Mark, chapter 6, verse 48, says these words. It says, "And he saw them straining at the rowing." Ask yourself this question. How did Jesus see them straining at the rowing? They were 2, 3, 4 miles offshore. It was the middle of the night. It was dark out. How could Jesus possibly see these disciples straining against the rowing in the middle of the night in the darkness and them being on the sea that far away? Well, the reason is that Jesus sees it all. He is the creator God. He has the ability to see the trials even when we don't think that he sees. Now, there's some good news in that. And the good news is that no matter what trial or hard time you're going through, no matter what thing you're encountering right now, Jesus sees it. You may think he doesn't see, but he sees it all. He knows what you're going through. He knows when the winds are against you. He knows when the waves are over your head. He knows when the storms happen. He knows when it's darkest out and in the middle of the night. He knows what is going on, even in the midst of the struggle and the trial. Jesus had given a promise, and the promise was is that he would never leave us nor forsake us. That's a promise that you can hang on to in the middle of the trial or the storm that we go through in life. And so remind yourself of that Jesus sees my trials. There's nothing in my life that Jesus doesn't see. There's nothing that takes him by surprise. There's no hard time that I'm facing, no dark time, no waves over my head, no winds blowing in my face that Jesus doesn't see. You may be in the middle of a trial like that right now. You may be going through a hard time right now. And you need to step back and remind yourself, Jesus sees my trial. Then we're going to find that he is going to react to the trial. He is not just going to see them, but he is going to do something about it. Let's read the rest of the story. Now, in the fourth watch of the night, Jesus went to them, walking on the sea. The fourth watch of the night. Every night is divided into 4 watches in that day. The first watch of the night was from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. The second watch of the night was from 9 p.m. to midnight. The third watch was from midnight to 3 a.m. The fourth watch of the night was from 3 a.m. to 6 a.m. Jesus came sometime in the fourth watch. He came sometime between 3 a.m. and 6 a.m. Why did he wait that long? Why didn't he come in the first watch, or the second watch, or the third watch? Why did he wait until the fourth watch? Well, my theory of all of that is this, that he waited until the fourth watch because he waited until they were the most exhausted. He waited until it felt the most hopeless. He waited until they were spent trying to try all of their own strength to get themselves out of the mess that they were in. He waited until they were tired from rowing against the waves and the wind all night. He waited that long so that they could realize that they can't, by their own effort, fix this problem. Jesus never shows up late. He always shows up right on time. I may want him to come in the first watch immediately, or the second watch even, maybe even the third watch. But Jesus often shows up in the fourth watch when it feels the darkest, when it feels the most ominous, when it feels like I can't row another stroke. I'm exhausted. I'm tired. I am worn out. God, you are my only hope. That's a picture of brokenness. Brokenness is when I come to God and say, God, you are my only hope. Without you, I've got nothing. Without you, I can't do anything. Jesus, I desperately need you. Those are the moments that God shows up. He sees your trial. He responds to your trial. He wants to help through your trial. But it's only when you finally come to the end of yourself and you say, Jesus, without you, I'm sunk. Without you, I have no hope. Jesus, you are the only hope that I have in life. Jesus, you are God, and I am not, and I surrender all that I am to you. When you come to Him in that kind of faith, He responds to the trials that you're going through. And it may not be exactly what you want it to be, but it is exactly what you and I need it to be. Well, it says that he came to them in the fourth watch of the night, and he was walking on the sea. Now, when the disciples saw him, they were troubled, saying, "It's a ghost," and they cried out for fear. That's not surprising, by the way. People can't walk on the sea. They have never seen Jesus ever walk on the sea before. They know he is God, that he can do things, but this is something exceptional. They weren't expecting this. So the only thing that they could possibly think is that this is a ghost. It's some kind of a spirit that is coming toward us. They were in fear. They cried out in fear. But immediately, straight away, he didn't waste any time. Immediately he responded. He spoke to them saying, "Be of good cheer. Cheer up. Don't worry about it. It's just me, guys. It is I. Do not be afraid." There are times in my life that I have experienced that where I have felt fear, and instantaneously God has said, "Don't be afraid. It's I. Be of good cheer." Whatever hard time you're going through, listen for that voice of God to say, "Don't worry about it. I've got this. Be of good cheer. Do not be afraid." Don't let fear overcome you. Don't let fear overwhelm you. Don't let anxiety take hold of you. Instead, look to Jesus. Be of good cheer. It is I. Do not be afraid. Jesus sees your trials. The second thing I want to focus in on here today is that there is this faith, Peter's faith. And Peter's faith, to me, is something that really gets a bad rap, because there is something exceptional that happens here. And I want you to see the exceptional thing that happens here with Peter's bold faith and then his letting go of that faith. Because there's something here that is very important as we walk through life ourselves. Let's look at the rest of this story together. After Jesus cried out and said, "Be of good cheer, it's I, do not be afraid," Peter answered him and said, "Lord, if it is you, command me to come to you on the water." So he said, "Come." And when Peter had come down out of the boat, he walked on the water to go to Jesus. Now, I want to suggest to you something that you've probably never heard before. Here's what I want to suggest: that he demonstrated at that moment great faith. He showed exceptional faith. Why? Because he, of all of the disciples, he was the only disciple that got out of the boat, stood on the water, and walked to Jesus. He was the only one that was willing to take the risk. He was the only one willing to step out in faith. At that moment, I believe Peter had great faith. The rest of the disciples stayed in the boat. What would you have done if you were there? If I was there, I probably would have stayed in the boat with the rest of the disciples. It's a storm that is happening. The waves are huge. The wind is blowing against us. We can't get anywhere. Why would I want to get out of a safe boat and jump into the water? We're 2 or 3 miles, 4 miles offshore. I don't want to do that. That's scary. The current could take me away. The wind could blow me away from the boat. I could be dead if that happens. I don't have a life preserver. If I get out into this water and I step out of the safe boat, I may die. Peter got out of the boat. He was willing to take a step of faith. I would submit to you that that was great faith. And as Peter looked to Jesus, he walked on the water to him the entire way. But here's what it says. When he saw that the wind was boisterous, how could he see that? Because the wind was churning up the waves so large. He saw that the waves were huge. He saw that the wind was blowing immensely. It was the middle of the night. When he saw those things, and he took his eyes off of Jesus, he began to sink, and he cried out, saying, Lord, save me. Even when Peter failed, Jesus was there to save him. Peter knew who to call out to at the moment of crisis. Jesus lifted Peter up, said to him, Oh, you of little faith, why did you doubt? I believe his faith went from great faith. He got out of the boat into a scary situation, looking at Jesus. He trusted Jesus. He kept his eyes on the water. That's great faith. But as soon as he took his eyes off of Jesus, he realized, I shouldn't be able to do this. He saw how great the waves were. He began to sink, and it turned into little faith. There are times in our lives that we step out in God and we have great faith. We're trusting Him. We're leaning upon Him. We're believing Him. But as soon as it becomes hard, as soon as life is difficult, we start looking around at us and we say, this is impossible. And our faith goes from great to little in an instant. That's what happened to Peter. Jesus says, Oh, you of little faith, why did you doubt? Then they got back into the boat. And as soon as they got back into the boat, the wind ceased, the waves ceased, and those who were in the boat came to Jesus, and they worshiped him, saying, Truly, you are the Son of God. He should have demonstrated that by now in their lives, but it was still a reminder of just how powerful and how big Jesus was. Jesus had healed, he had cast out demons, he had done the miraculous. He had fed the 5,000, he had calmed a storm earlier. Now he had walked on water and calmed another storm. What else did they need to believe that he really was the Son of God? Their response was, Truly, you are the Son of God. Peter had a moment of doubt. The doubt literally means to be divided in two. True faith is single-mindedly focusing on Jesus. But when you look at things around you and you're divided, it turns into doubt. Peter steps out in great faith, and then he let doubt come in, and it turned into little faith. So I would ask you today, are you walking by great faith, or are you walking by little faith? Are you keeping your eyes on Jesus, knowing that he sees you, or are you looking at the circumstances of the world around you? The problems of the world, the trials of the world, the worries of the world. If you're looking at the trials, the problems, the worries of the world, you're not looking at Jesus. And so here's what I would encourage you to do today is to fix your eyes on Jesus, the author and perfecter of faith, who for the joy set before him, he endured the cross, despising its shame, and now he is seated at the right hand of God. Fix your eyes on Jesus, the one who protects us, the one who sees us, the one who helps us to walk by faith. Well, that's all I have for you today. Jesus sees your trials, and he wants you to walk by great faith. Are you doing that today? Join me back here tomorrow as we get into Matthew chapter 15 and see what's in store for us then. Until then, have a great day. God bless you, and I'll see you back here tomorrow.